The night had settled over the city like a velvet curtain, broken only by the orange glow of street lamps flickering across the busy district. The air smelled faintly of fried food and car exhaust, a mixture that clung to the sidewalks outside Rio's restaurant chain, one of the most successful eateries in the region. But tonight, something unusual was about to unfold. A man in a plain navy cap, a worn polo, and faded jeans strolled toward the glass doors of one of his busiest branches. His steps were casual, yet deliberate. His eyes scanned every detail. The peeling posters on the windows, the crowd of customers inside waiting for seats, the faint hum of chatter mixed with the sizzle of grills. This wasn't just any customer. This was Rio, the 35-year-old CEO, owner of the entire chain. But tonight, no one knew that. Not the manager, not the staff, not even the customers were waiting impatiently for their food. He wasn't here in a tailored suit or driving his sleek black sedan. He had come in disguise, determined to see what really happened when the boss wasn't watching. And the first thing that happened, he was denied entry to his own restaurant. "Sir, we're full," the hostess at the door snapped, not even lifting her eyes from the reservation sheet. She had a sharp voice, the kind that cut through the bustle of the room. "No walk-ins. We booked." Rio tilted his head, feigning confusion. "Booked? But there's an open table right there." The hostess finally looked up, irritation flashing in her eyes. "That's reserved. Please step aside. You're holding up the line." Rio swallowed his annoyance, forcing a polite smile. "I'm happy to wait. Maybe I could sit at the bar." Her lips pressed then. "We're not doing bar seating tonight." And with that, she turned her back. Rio stayed still, breathing deeply. He wasn't here to get angry. He was here to learn. Already, he had learned something. The very front door of his restaurant was guarded not with warmth, but with hostility. He stepped aside, watching. Customers behind him got the same cold treatment, some even walking away in frustration. A young couple muttered, "Forget this place," before leaving for the diner across the street. Rio felt a pang in his chest. Every customer mattered. Everyone who left unhappy carried a piece of their brand with them. And yet, inside, the real test awaited. Eventually, Rio slipped in when a small crowd distracted the hostess. The smell hit him instantly. Smoky grilled chicken, butter melting over warm bread, and the tang of citrus in the air. It should have felt comforting. Instead, it was overpowered by the tension he saw etched into his employees' faces. The servers moved quickly, almost frantically, weaving between tables with trays balanced on shaking hands. Their uniforms were wrinkled, their eyes tired. From a corner, a manager barked orders. "Table 6, why is that food not out yet? Move faster." The staff flinched with every word. Rio found a quiet spot near the kitchen where no one seemed to notice him. He sat, pretending to scroll through his phone, but in reality, he was watching, listening. That's when he saw her. A young woman in her late 20s, hair tied back tightly, carrying a tray far too heavy for her slender arms. Her name tag read Emma. She moved with quiet determination, never letting her smile drop, even when a rude customer snapped their fingers at her like she was invisible. "Miss, we've been waiting 20 minutes. What's taking so long?" The man sneered. Emma bowed her head slightly. "I'm so sorry. Sir? I'll check with the kitchen right away." She rushed off, her sneakers squeaking on the greasy floor. Rio followed her with his eyes. Through the small kitchen window, he caught a glimpse of her pleading with the cooks. "Please, can we get Order 14 out? They've been waiting." The head chef, a burly man with sweat dripping down his forehead, shot back. "You think you're the only one with orders? Get in line." Emma bit her lip but didn't argue. She simply nodded and hurried back out to floor, empty-handed. That resilience struck Rio. He could see the exhaustion in her body, the way her shoulders sagged when she thought no one was watching. Yet still, she smiled. Still, she carried herself with dignity. He wanted to know more. The hours dragged on. Rio witnessed countless small injustices. A busboy was scolded for breaking a plate, even though the manager had overloaded his tray. A new server was reduced to tears after being humiliated in front of customers. Kitchen staff are skipping their meal breaks because the manager won't allow it. And through it all, Emma kept working. At one point, Rio saw her slip into the break room for just a moment. She pulled out a worn photo from her apron. A little boy, no older than 6, smiling with missing front teeth. Emma whispered to the picture, "Just one more shift. Matteo, Mommy's trying." Her voice cracked. Rio's throat tightened. She wasn't just an employee. She was a mother fighting for her child, holding on despite the weight crushing her every day. The breaking point came later that night. A customer had been overcharged, and when Emma tried to correct the bill, the manager stormed over. "What do you think you're doing?" he barked. "I was just..." Emma started, but he cut her off. "You don't touch the register without permission. You want to steal from us? Is that it?" Her face went pale. "No, sir. I was just trying to fix a mistake." The manager leaned in, his voice low and venomous. "One more slip like that, and you're gone. Do you understand?" Emma nodded quickly, eyes glistening, and hurried away. Rio clenched his fists under the table. Enough was enough. He stood, finally drawing attention. The manager spotted him and frowned. "Sir, this area isn't for customers. You need to leave." Rio reached into his pocket, pulled out his phone, and pressed a number. Within minutes, 2 security guards from corporate arrived at the door. Confused employees whispered to one another, unsure of what was happening. Rio removed his cap slowly, revealing his face. The room fell into stunned silence. The manager's eyes widened. "Wait, you..." Rio's voice was calm but carried the weight of authority. "I'm Rio, the CEO, and this is my restaurant." Gasps echoed through the room. Some staff rose. Others exchanged looks of relief, as if they had been waiting for this moment all along. The manager stammered. I didn't know." "That's the problem," Rio interrupted. His voice hardened. "You didn't treat me like a guest. You didn't treat them." He gestured at his staff. "Like people. And now, we're going to talk about it." The security guard stepped forward, and the manager swallowed hard. But Rio's eyes weren't on him. They were on Emma, standing quietly at the back, still holding her tray. She looked at him with wide, trembling eyes, and for the first time that night, she knew she was seen. The story doesn't end here. What Rio uncovered inside his own restaurant was only the beginning. There were secrets deeper than poor management. There were struggles buried under years of silence. And as he prepared to confront them, one truth burned in his mind. Empathy and humility are the foundations of true leadership. It's not about the food on the plate or the profits in the ledger. It's about people, those who serve, those who sacrifice, those who smile even when they are breaking inside. When leaders forget that, they lose everything. Rio wasn't about to let that happen, but what he would discover next would shake him to his core. In life and in leadership, it's easy to forget the quiet struggles of the people who hold everything together. Empathy is not weakness, it's strength. Humility is not lowering yourself, it's rising to meet others where they are. The true measure of leadership is not how much power you hold, but how much humanity you preserve. The air inside the restaurant hung heavy with silence. The moment Rio revealed himself as a CEO, time seemed to stop. The staff looked at him with a mixture of fear and hope, the customers whispering among themselves as if they'd stumbled into a movie. But for Rio, the night was only beginning. The manager, still pale and trembling, muttered something about misunderstandings, but Rio wasn't listening to him anymore. His eyes were on Emma, the young server whose strength had carried the entire night. "Emma," Rio called softly. Her head snapped up. She hesitated, glancing between the boss she never knew was watching and the trays still clutched in her hands. Slowly, she set it down. "Yes, sir?" Her voice quivered, not from fear, but from exhaustion. Rio gestured toward a quieter corner. "Come with me. I want to hear your story." They sat at a small booth near the window, the neon lights from across the street reflecting faintly on the glass. "Tell me," Rio said gently, "what's it like working here? I want the truth." Emma fidgeted with her apron. Her eyes darted toward the manager, who lingered nervously nearby. Rio followed her gaze and raised a hand. "Don't worry about him. He won't interrupt. Not tonight." The security guard stepped closer to the manager, ensuring he stayed out of earshot. Emma exhaled shakily, then began. "I've been working here for almost 2 years. I took the job because it was close to home, and the pay was just enough to keep me afloat. I have a son, Matteo. He's 6. Her lips curved into the faintest smile. He loves drawing, wants to be an architect someday. But the smile faded as quickly as it came. This job, it's been harder than I ever thought. Long hours, no real breaks. If we complain, the manager cuts our shifts. If we mess up, he threatens to fire us. A lot of good people left already. Those who stayed, we're just trying to survive. Rio leaned forward. And what about you? Why stay? Emma's eyes glistened. She pulled a small photo of her son from her apron, the same one Rio had seen earlier. For him, Matteo needs me. Rent doesn't wait. Groceries don't wait. And I can't let him see me fail. Her voice cracked, and she quickly wiped her cheek. Sometimes I wonder if he even notices how tired I am. But when I get home, and he hugs me like I'm the strongest person in the world, that's what keeps me going. Rio's chest tightened. Every word she spoke was heavy with sacrifice he had never truly seen from behind the walls of his office. But Emma wasn't finished. There's something else, she whispered, lowering her voice. Something you need to know. Rio listened closely as Emma revealed the deeper corruption. The manager skims from the staff's tips, she said. He says it's policy that a portion has to go back to the house. But we know he pockets it. Some weeks, we lose almost a third of what we earn. And if anyone questions it, he cuts their hours or schedules them on dead shifts. People are too scared to fight back. Rio's hands clenched into fists beneath the table. Emma continued, and it's not just the tips. He forces us to work off the clock. Says the restaurant can't afford the overtime, so if we want to keep our jobs, we volunteer. We clean, stock, prep, all unpaid. Some of us are here until 2 a.m., then back again at 8 the next morning. Her voice trembled with frustration. I thought maybe this was normal. Maybe this is just how the industry works. But then I heard other restaurants don't do this. They actually treat their staff like people. She looked down, ashamed, as if speaking out was betrayal. I didn't want to say anything. I need this job. But if you really are the boss, you need to know. Rio sat in stunned silence. His mind raced with fury, guilt, and determination. He had built this company to give people opportunities, not to strip them of dignity. He thought about the glowing reports his regional managers had sent him, the ones filled with polished numbers and staged photos. None of them mentioned stolen wages, mistreatment, or fear. His chain wasn't thriving. It was rotting from the inside, and Emma had been brave enough to reveal it. Rio finally spoke, his voice steady but laced with emotion. Emma, thank you for your honesty, for your courage. I promise you, things will change, starting tonight. Her eyes widened, hope flickering for the first time. But before Rio could say more, a voice boomed from across the room. Enough of this nonsense. It was the manager. He had broken free from security guards, his face red with rage. You can't just walk in here and believe her lies. She's just a server. They'll say anything for sympathy. The room froze. Customers watched. Employees held their breath. Rio stood, towering over him now without the disguise. His expression was sharp, unshakable. I believed her, Rio said coldly, because I've been watching. I saw it all, the way you treat staff, the way you treat guests. You've been running this place like a kingdom, but tonight, your reign is over. The manager's mouth opened, but no words came out. Security, Rio said firmly. The guard stepped forward. The manager struggled, yelling about loyalty and lies, but the sudden applause from the staff drowned out his voice. For the first time in a long time, hope returned to the restaurant floor. As the noise settled, Rio turned back to Emma. She looked overwhelmed, tears streaking down her cheeks, but this time, they weren't just tears of pain. Tomorrow, Rio said softly to her, I want you to come to my office. We'll talk about your future here. Not just yours, everyone's. This place is going to change. Emma nodded, unable to find words. Rio knew the fight wasn't over. Firing one corrupt manager was only the beginning. There were other branches, other shadows hiding behind reports and fake smiles. If it were happening here, It could be happening everywhere. And to uncover it, Rio would have to go deeper undercover than ever before. Behind every uniform, there's a story. Emma's story is a story of millions. Single parents, immigrants, workers who sacrifice everything for their families. Leadership is not just about profit. It's about protecting those who make profit possible. Corruption thrives in silence, but it crumbles in the face of courage. True leadership means listening, even when it hurts, and acting, even when it costs. The restaurant was quiet again, though the tension still lingered in the air. The corrupt manager had been escorted out, the staff whispering with cautious relief. Rio stood by the window, staring out at the glowing streetlights. He should have felt victory. He had confronted injustice, defended his people. Yet, a gnawing unease pulled at him. Emma's words echoed in his mind. If it's happening here, it could be happening everywhere. And she was right. This was just one branch, one manager, one night. What about the dozens of other restaurants carrying his name? The reports he trusted? The executives he relied on? Rio suddenly realized his empire might not be what he thought it was. And if corruption ran deeper, it wasn't just his company at risk. It was every Emma working quietly in the shadows, every Matteo waiting at home for a parent who deserved better. He turned back to the staff, his voice steady. Tonight, things change. Not just here, everywhere. The employees exchanged glances, their eyes lighting with cautious hope. But Rio knew the fight was only beginning. The next morning, in his corporate office high above the city, Rio called for an emergency board meeting. The executives entered with their polished suits, rehearsed smiles, and expensive watches glinting under the lights. They had no idea what Rio had seen the night before. He stood at the head of the long glass table, gripping the edges tightly. "I went undercover," he said, his voice echoing in the sleek room. "I visited one of our busiest branches, and what I found was corruption, abuse, theft, employees forced to work off the clock, tips stolen, customers mistreated." The room shifted uncomfortably, but no one spoke. Rio's gaze swept over them. "And I have reason to believe it's not an isolated incident." One executive cleared his throat. "With respect, Rio, restaurants are messy by nature. Staff complain. Mistakes happen. We can't blow this out of proportion." Rio's jaw tightened. "Out of proportion? I saw it with my own eyes. If this is happening in one branch, I want to know what's happening in the others. We will investigate." The executives exchanged glances, silent but telling. Rio noticed. He wasn't just fighting against a corrupt manager anymore. He was up against something much bigger. Later that week, Rio began a series of surprise visits, branch after branch, city after city. And the deeper he went, the more the truth revealed itself. At one restaurant, a dishwasher whispered that he hadn't been paid overtime in months. At another, servers showed him their pay stubs, numbers that didn't add up. Some branches even had secret fees deducted from staff paychecks, labeled as uniform maintenance or training costs. But the most chilling discovery? It was all too organized. The same patterns repeated across multiple locations. The same excuses from managers. The same fear in employees' eyes. This wasn't a few bad apples. This was systemic. And Rio began to suspect someone at corporate was orchestrating it. Back in his office, late one night, Rio combed through internal reports. His desk was buried under stacks of files, pay records, and tip distributions. The numbers didn't lie. A pattern emerged. Profits at certain branches were unusually high, while wages stayed suspiciously low. It was as if the system itself had been designed to bleed the workers dry. Rio leaned back, running a hand through his hair. His chest felt heavy. Someone had built this shadow system inside his own company. Someone he trusted. The next day, Rio called Emma to his office. She looked out of place in the gleaming skyscraper, her modest clothes contrasting with the polished floors and glass walls. But when she walked in, she held her head high. Rio gestured for her to sit. "Emma, I need your help. You were brave enough to tell me the truth. But I need to know more. I need someone on the inside, someone who can talk to the staff without them being afraid." Emma hesitated. "Me? But I'm just a server." Rio shook his head. "You're not just anything. You're the voice they'll trust. You've lived what they've lived. If we're going to clean this company, I can't do it alone." Her eyes widened, then slowly she nodded. For the first time in years, Emma felt something stir inside her. Power, purpose. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was fighting back. Together, Rio and Emma began to uncover the truth. They set up confidential calls with employees across the country. They created an anonymous tip line. Stories poured in, dozens, then hundreds, and they all pointed to one source: the regional directors. These were the middlemen, executives who oversaw multiple branches. They were the ones pressuring managers to squeeze staff, to falsify reports, to inflate profits. And they covered it up with glowing numbers that fooled the board. Rio felt sick. He had trusted these people, dined with them, promoted them, and all the while, they were exploiting the very workers who built his empire. One night, as Rio drove home, his phone buzzed. It was Emma. Her voice shook with urgency. "Rio, I think I found something. One of the managers showed me an email. It came from corporate. Instructions to cut labor costs illegally. It wasn't just the regional directors. It came from higher." Rio gripped the steering wheel tighter. "How high?" There was silence on the line. Then Emma whispered, "Your own board." The words hit him like a punch to the chest. His board of directors, the very people sitting across from him in meetings, smiling, shaking his hand, were orchestrating corruption. And if Rio confronted them, he wouldn't just be risking his company. He'd be risking everything. Corruption doesn't grow in the dark. It thrives in plain sight, hidden behind numbers, excuses, and power. Sometimes the enemy is not outside, but within. True leadership is not about building an empire. It's about protecting it from those who would exploit it for greed. And sometimes the bravest voices come from the ones who were never meant to be heard. But Rio's fight was far from over. He now knew the truth. The betrayal ran all the way to the top. And as he prepared for the battle ahead, one question haunted him. How do you take down the very people who control your throne? The city slept, but Emma couldn't. She sat at her small kitchen table, her son Matteo asleep in the next room, his quiet breathing the only comfort in the heavy silence. Spread across the table were scribbled notes, pay stubs from co-workers, and fragments of conversations she'd secretly recorded on her phone. Just a week ago, she was a tired server, fighting for tips and dignity in a broken system. Now, she was undercover, working directly with Rio. She was no longer just carrying trays. She was carrying the truth of dozens, soon hundreds, of employees who had been silenced for too long. But every truth came with a risk. And Emma knew, if the wrong person found out what she was doing, she wouldn't just lose her job. She could lose everything. It started quietly. Rio had given her a small, encrypted phone, untraceable, where she could log stories from employees she met. The plan was simple. Emma would transfer between different branches under the guise of helping with staff shortages. In reality, she was gathering evidence, listening, documenting, exposing the system from the inside. Her first assignment was a suburban branch 2 hours away. On paper, it was one of the highest performing restaurants in the region. Profits soared, reviews glowed. But when Emma arrived, she instantly recognized the same tension she had lived through. The staff smiled at customers, but behind the kitchen doors, fear choked the air. One cook, an older man with weary eyes, muttered to her while scrubbing pans. "Don't trust the manager here. She'll make you clock out early, then force you to finish your shift off the books. Happened last night. Happened all week." Emma's chest tightened. The same trick, again and again. Later, during a break, a server whispered to her in the corner of the staff room. "They take our tips. Always say it's corporate policy. We can't complain. Anyone who does, doesn't get shifts anymore." Emma's phone buzzed in her apron. She ducked into the restroom, locked the stall, and typed quickly into the encrypted log. Tip theft confirmed. Forced unpaid labor confirmed. Staff terrified of retaliation. She hit send. The data went straight to Rio's secure server. For the first time, Emma felt like a soldier in a quiet war. Days turned into weeks. Branch after branch, Emma became the eyes and ears Rio never had. Sometimes she played the role of a new hire, nervous, eager to learn. Other times, She filled in as a floater, helping wherever needed. She learned to ask questions carefully, to listen more than she spoke. Staff trusted her because she wasn't corporate. She was one of them, and the stories they told broke her heart. A single father who worked double shift but never saw the full paycheck he was promised. A college student whose tuition was slipping away because a manager docked her hours out of spite. A dishwasher who injured his hand on broken glass but was told to work through it because the manager refused to file an incident report. Emma recorded it all. Every detail, every voice, every cry for help. But the deeper she went, the more dangerous it became. One night, at a downtown location, Emma noticed the manager watching her too closely. He was a sharp-eyed man in his 40s, with a smile that never touched his eyes. "You ask a lot of questions," he said one evening, his tone casual but laced with suspicion. "Most new hires don't care about overtime or tips. You're curious." Emma froze. Her throat went dry. She forced a laugh. "Guess I just like to know how things work." The manager stared at her for a long moment, then leaned closer. "Careful. Curiosity gets people in trouble around here." Emma smiled weakly, but inside, her stomach churned. That night, she called Rio from the safety of her car. "They're on to me," she whispered, gripping the steering wheel. Rio's voice was calm but firm. "Emma, you're doing incredible work. But if you ever feel unsafe, you walk away. Nothing is worth risking your son losing you." Emma looked at the photo of Matteo taped to her dashboard. Her heart ached, but then she thought of all the workers who didn't have a voice. "No," she said softly. "We can't stop now." The evidence piled higher. Rio's team began mapping the patterns. Across nearly every branch Emma visited, the same practices appeared. Tip skimming, forced unpaid labor, intimidation. But something even more chilling emerged. Emails. Emma managed to snap photos of printed memos left in break rooms, directives signed not by branch managers but by regional directors. The language was coded, phrases like optimize labor costs and redistribute gratuity pools. But Emma knew what they meant. She sent the images to Rio. Hours later, he called her, his voice shaking with anger. "These aren't rogue managers. They are following orders." Emma's blood ran cold. "So it goes higher?" "Yes," Rio said, "all the way to corporate. Maybe even the board." The board. The same people who had smiled in polished suits, praising Rio for record profits. Emma's stomach twisted. "They are not just stealing from workers," she whispered. "They are stealing from you." One night, Emma returned home after a grueling shift. Matteo ran to her, wrapping his small arms around her legs. "Mommy, you're late again," he said with sleepy eyes. "Did you have to work extra?" Emma knelt, hugging him tightly. Tears pricked her eyes as she whispered, "Yes, baby, but it's for you. One day, you won't have to see me this tired." She tucked him into bed, kissed his forehead, then sat again at her kitchen table, her notes spread before her. The weight of it all threatened to crush her. She wasn't a detective. She wasn't a lawyer. She was just a mother, a server, trying to do the right thing. And yet, somehow, she was at the center of a storm big enough to bring down giants. Meanwhile, Rio was preparing for war. He had gathered everything Emma uncovered, documents, testimonies, photos, and recordings. But he knew evidence alone wasn't enough. The board would fight back. They would deny, deflect, and destroy anyone who threatened their power. And that included Emma. One evening, Rio met Emma in a quiet diner outside the city. No suit, no corporate gloss. Just two people at a corner booth, coffee steaming between them. "You've done more than I ever asked," Rio said, his voice low. "More than I could have hoped. But now, it's going to get dangerous. The board won't stay quiet when they realize what we have." Emma stared at him, her eyes tired but fierce. "I didn't do this for revenge," she said. "I did this for everyone who's still scared to speak. For Matteo, for myself. If we stop now, nothing changes." Rio looked at her, and for a moment, he saw not just an employee, but an equal, a partner in a fight bigger than both of them. He nodded slowly. "Then we keep going. But next time, we go straight to the top." The plan was set. Emma would continue undercover for 2 more weeks, gathering final proof. Rio would prepare the legal team, allies, and press contacts quietly, ensuring that when the truth dropped, it couldn't be buried. But what neither of them knew, the board was already watching, and someone inside the corporation had started asking questions about Emma. Sometimes the smallest voices become the loudest echoes. Emma was never meant to be a hero, just a server, just a mother, just someone trying to survive. But when courage meets opportunity, even the overlooked can shake the powerful. True leadership doesn't mean fighting alone. It means empowering others to fight beside you. And the most dangerous corruption is not in broken systems. It's in the silence we allow. But the silence was breaking. And as Emma prepared for her final undercover mission, she had no idea that the board was already moving against her. The hunter was about to become the hunted. The rain came down in sheets at night, streaking the city windows with silver and shadow. Emma sat in her car outside yet another branch, staring at the neon sign glowing faintly above the doorway. Her hands trembled on the steering wheel. This wasn't fear of hard work. She'd handled 12-hour shifts, broken glass, burns, even harassment from entitled customers. No, this fear was different. Someone was watching her. 4 days now. She had noticed it. Managers whispering when she entered, the way conversations hushed the moment she stepped into break rooms. Last night, she could have sworn she saw a black SUV park across the street from her apartment, headlights off, engine humming. She told herself it was paranoia, but tonight, something in her gut screamed otherwise. Inside the branch, the atmosphere was as thick as a storm outside. The manager, a heavy-set man with slick-back hair and a toothpick between his lips, barely looked at her when she clocked in. His eyes lingered a second too long, cold and suspicious. "Service shortage again," he grunted. "You'll cover 6 tables on your own. Don't complain." Emma forced a polite smile. "Of course." But as she turned away, she heard him murmur under his breath, "Let's see how long you last." The shift was brutal. Orders piled up, customers grew restless, and Emma felt the walls closing in. Yet, beneath the chaos, she noticed something off. The tip jar, locked behind a bar, was emptied halfway through the night, though customers kept dropping bills in. She saw the bartender slip the cash into an envelope, hand it to the manager, and nod. Later, she asked a fellow server, a timid young woman barely out of college, about it. "Oh, that's corporate policy," the girl whispered, glancing nervously at the cameras. "Tips get redistributed. At least, that's what they tell us." Emma lowered her voice. "Do you ever actually see the money?" The girl hesitated, then, almost too quietly to hear, "No." By midnight, the restaurant emptied. The lights dimmed, chairs stacked on tables. Emma headed for the door, exhausted but determined to log what she'd seen. But as she reached for her coat, the manager's voice stopped her. "Emma, stay a moment." She turned. The room felt suddenly smaller, colder. The staff had vanished. Only the manager remained, leaning against the counter, arms crossed. He smiled, but it wasn't friendly. "You've been here, what, 3 weeks? And already you're making friends, asking questions, poking your nose where it doesn't belong." Emma's throat tightened. "I don't know what you mean." His smile widened. "Don't play dumb. We know exactly who you are." Her heart thudded. Did he mean we as in corporate? Or the board? "I'm just a server," she managed. The manager stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Servers don't carry encrypted phones. Servers don't snoop through pay stubs. Someone's been feeding information to the top. And guess what? The board doesn't like rats." Emma's blood turned to ice. She barely slept that night. When she reached her apartment, she triple-locked the door, closed the blinds, and clutched Matteo's sleeping body for comfort. Her phone buzzed at 2 a.m. A message from an unknown number. "Stop digging, or your kid pays the price." Emma's scream caught in her throat. She dropped the phone like it burned her. For the first time, she thought about quitting. She thought about Matteo's safety, about what these people were capable of. But then she remembered every exhausted face, every trembling voice that had whispered their truth to her. She remembered the dishwasher who worked through a bleeding hand. The single father was robbed of his overtime. The college girl stripped of her tips. If she walked away now, who would fight for them? Emma picked up the phone again, hand shaking, and dialed Rio. When he answered, his voice was heavy with sleep, but the second he heard her tone, he snapped awake. "They threatened Matteo," Emma whispered, tears streaking her face. "They know it's me. Rio, I can't do this anymore. I can't put him in danger." There was a long pause. Then Rio spoke, steady and firm. "Emma, listen to me. You are not alone. I'll have security outside your apartment by morning. You've done more than anyone could have asked, but we can't back down. That's exactly what they want." Emma's sobs quieted. "You don't understand," she whispered. "They are bigger than us. They have money, lawyers, and power. They'll bury us." Rio's voice softened. "Maybe, but they don't have your courage, and they don't have the truth." The next day, Rio kept his promise. 2 plainclothes security guards shadowed Emma discreetly, one even escorting Matteo to school. It gave her a sliver of safety, but the tension never left. At the next branch she worked, Emma found something worse than tip theft. Boxes of expired meat were hidden in the freezer. Staff were ordered to serve it anyway. She snapped photos, sent them to Rio. But this time, the manager caught her. "What are you doing back here?" he barked, storming into the kitchen. Emma froze, phone half hidden in her apron. "Just checking stock," she stammered. The manager narrowed his eyes, then smirked. "Right, and I'm the Pope." He lunged for her apron, but Emma darted away, bolting out the back door into the rain. She didn't stop running until she reached her car. Her phone buzzed with a new message from Rio. "We've got enough. Time to end this." That night, Emma sat across from Rio again, in the same diner where it had all begun. This time, she wasn't just exhausted. She was furious. "They are not just stealing money," she hissed. "They are poisoning people. They don't care who they hurt, as long as the profits keep coming." Rio nodded grimly. "Which is why we hit them where it hurts. Tomorrow, board meeting. You will be there with me." Emma's eyes widened. "Me?" Rio leaned forward. "You've lived it. They can deny my words, but they can't deny yours." Emma's stomach flipped. The thought of standing before the board, the very people who had threatened her son, made her blood run cold. But she also felt something else, resolve. She thought of Matteo's face, of every co-worker who'd whispered their truth into her ear. She nodded slowly. "Then let's finish this." Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's a decision to act even when fear has you by the throat. Emma was terrified of losing her job, her safety, her son. Yet she refused to stay silent, because silence, in the face of injustice, is its own kind of betrayal. Sometimes the bravest thing we can do is to keep standing when every voice tells us to sit down. But as Emma and Rio prepared for the board meeting, neither of them knew. The board already had a plan of its own, and Emma's name was at the very center of it. The air in the corporate tower was different. Cold, recycled, almost sterile. Emma could smell the faint tang of polish on the marble floors, hear the hollow echo of her footsteps as she followed Rio through the gleaming lobby. This was not the world of spilled drinks, clattering plates, or greasy kitchens. This was the world of money, power, decisions made in silence that rippled through thousands of lives. Emma tugged at the sleeve of a borrowed blazer. She had never worn one before. It felt strange, like armor that didn't quite fit. Her hands trembled as she smoothed it down. Rio glanced at her as the elevator door slid open. "You don't have to speak if you're not ready," he said quietly. "I'll handle the fight." Emma shook her head. Her voice came out small, but steady. "No, they need to hear me. From me." Rio's gaze lingered for a moment, then he nodded. The elevator rose, floor after floor, the numbers ticking higher, until the doors opened into a corridor lined with glass walls and portraits of smiling executives. Their eyes seemed to follow her, polished smiles masking a rot she now understood too well. At the end of the corridor, the boardroom, and waiting inside, her enemies. The room was enormous, built to impress. A long mahogany table stretched like a runway, leather chairs gleaming under recessed lighting. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city, skyscrapers stabbing the sky. Around the table sat a dozen board members, all sharp suits and colder stays. At the head, the chairman, a silver-haired man with hands folded neatly before him. looked up with a thin smile. "Rio, you're late." His gaze flicked to Emma, dismissive, calculating. "And you brought company." Rio didn't flinch. He pulled out a chair for Emma before sitting himself. "She's here because she's earned the right," he said flatly. A ripple of discomfort moved through the board. One woman leaned toward her neighbor, whispering. Another raised an eyebrow, amused. The chairman cleared his throat. "Well, then, shall we begin?" The meeting started with the usual facade. Financial reports, projections, growth charts are displayed on the wall screens. Words like shareholder value and optimization strategies floated around the room. Emma sat silently, her palms sweaty, her heart pounding. Every minute stretched like an hour. Finally, the chairman turned to Rio. "You asked for this meeting. We assume it's important." Rio's jaw tightened. He reached into his briefcase and placed a folder on the table. "It is. What I'm about to present concerns not only the survival of this company, but the lives of every employee we've sworn to protect." He slid the folder forward. The chairman didn't touch it. "Go on," he said coolly. Rio's voice hardened. "I've received evidence of systemic corruption across multiple branches. Tip theft, unpaid labor, safety violations. Evidence that traces back not to rogue managers, but to directives from this very board." A murmur rippled across the room. The chairman raised an eyebrow, almost amused. "Those are serious accusations." "They are not accusations," Rio said. "They are facts." He gestured to Emma. "And this woman, Emma, has lived them. She went undercover in half a dozen locations. She has recordings, documents, testimonies. You can deny me, but you cannot deny her." All eyes turned to Emma. For a moment, she wanted to shrink into the leather chair, disappear under their icy stays. But then she remembered the dishwasher's bleeding hand, the single father's empty wallet. Her son's sleepy voice asked why she always came home so late. She lifted her chin. "My name is Emma. I worked in your restaurants for 5 years. I've been forced to clock out early and keep working. I've had my tips stolen. I've watched managers threaten workers into silence. And I've seen your policies, your orders, pinned to break room walls." Her voice shook, but she kept going. "You sit here in glass towers talking about optimization, but your optimization is destroying lives. People are hungry, scared, broken because of you." Silence fell over the room, heavy, suffocating. Finally, one board member, a woman in a crimson suit, scoffed. "Do you have any idea what it costs to keep a corporation of this size alive? Labor cuts, redistribution. They're not corruption. They're a necessity. If a few workers can't handle that, they are free to leave." Emma's eyes burned. "Leave? And go where?" "You created a system where every branch works the same way. People stay because they are desperate, because they have kids, because they don't have a choice. You count on their silence, but not anymore." She slammed a small USB drive onto the table. "Everything I found is on here, and Rio has copies. Even if you bury me, the truth won't die with me." For the first time, the chairman's mask slipped. His jaw clenched, his eyes narrowing. "You think you're brave," he said softly, "but you're a liability, a server, disposable." Emma's breath caught. For a moment, fear clawed up her throat, but then Rio's voice cut through, sharp as a blade. "No, she's the future of this company. You," he pointed around the table, "are the liability, because when the press sees this, when the lawsuits begin, it won't be Emma's name on the headlines. It'll be yours." The room erupted in voices, some outraged, some panicked, others furious. "This is blackmail. She's lying. Where's the proof? We need legal, now." The chairman slammed a fist against the table, silencing them. "Enough," he barked. He turned his glare to Rio. "You've forgotten your place. You may be the CEO, but the board owns this company. We decide what survives and what doesn't." Rio leaned forward, his voice deadly calm. "Then you've forgotten what leadership means. It's not about survival of profit. It's about survival of people. And I won't let you destroy them any longer." The standoff hung in the air, every breath heavy, every heartbeat pounding. Finally, the chairman leaned back, his expression icy. "Very well," he said. "If you want war, you'll have it. But understand this, both of you, what happens in this room doesn't stay here. You've made enemies, powerful ones." His gaze flicked to Emma, cold as steel. And enemies don't get happy endings. Emma's stomach twisted, but she didn't flinch, because for the first time, she realized he was afraid, not of her, but of the truth. The meeting ended in chaos. Some board members stormed out. Others whispered urgently into phones. The chairman remained seated, his eyes locked on Rio and Emma as they left the room. In the elevator down, Emma's knees finally buckled. She pressed a hand to her mouth, shaking. "I thought they were going to..." Her voice broke. Rio placed a steady hand on her shoulder. "They wanted to scare you, but you didn't back down. That's more power than they'll ever have." Emma looked up at him, her eyes filled with both fear and determination. "What happens now?" Rio exhaled slowly. "Now? Power doesn't crumble because of one punch. It crumbles because of persistence." Emma was just one voice in a room full of giants. But truth, once spoken, spreads like fire. The board believed they could intimidate, manipulate, and silence forever. But courage is contagious. And sometimes, the bravest act isn't winning the fight in one day. It's choosing to fight at all. As Rio and Emma stepped back into the stormy city night, their battle had only just begun. The board was cornered. But cornered animals don't retreat quietly. And Emma was about to learn how far the powerful would go to protect their empire. We make it public. The morning after the boardroom showdown, the city awoke to headlines that couldn't be ignored. Screens across coffee shops, office lobbies, and train stations flashed with the same story. Restaurant empire under fire. Employees expose exploitation, wage theft, and abuse. News anchors' voices spilled into every living room. Camera crews camped outside multiple branches. Customers clutched receipts, stunned, as interviews with trembling employees aired live. And at the center of it all, Emma. She hadn't wanted the cameras. She hadn't wanted her face on screens or her voice on radios. She was a server, a mother, someone who used to pray for tips just to pay rent. But now the world wanted her story. It began with one leaked clip. Emma's voice, shaky but strong, played across millions of screens. You sit in glass towers talking about optimization. But your optimization is destroying lives. People are hungry, scared, broken because of you. The recording from the boardroom, released by Rio's team, spread like wildfire. In a matter of hours, it was shared, dissected, and replayed. And for every troll or skeptic who called her a liar, 100 workers from across the country came forward, saying, "She's telling the truth. It happened to me too." The board tried to contain the damage. Crisis statements flooded the press. "We value our employees. These allegations are exaggerated. An internal review will be conducted." But it was too late. The tide had turned. Customers organized boycotts. Shareholders demanded answers. Politicians weighed in, calling for investigations into labor violations. And then came the lawsuit, a class action suit representing hundreds of workers, their names and faces now public, standing shoulder to shoulder with Emma. The empire had built its fortune on silence. But silence was gone. For Emma, the storm was overwhelming. Paparazzi waited outside her apartment. Neighbors whispered her name. Strangers stopped her in grocery aisles to say thank you, or, sometimes, to sneer. But the hardest part was Matteo. One afternoon, as she picked him up from school, he tugged at her hand and asked, "Mom, are we safe?" Emma's heart twisted. She knelt, pulling him close. "Yes, baby, we're safe. I promise. Mommy's just telling the truth. And the truth makes some people angry. But it also makes good people listen." Matteo's small arms wrapped around her neck. "I'm proud of you, Mommy." Emma's eyes stung as she whispered back, "I'm doing this for you." Meanwhile, Rio faced his own storm. The board tried to oust him, accusing him of betrayal, of orchestrating a smear campaign. But with the evidence Emma had gathered, Rio fought back. In televised interviews, he didn't mince words. "This isn't about me. It's about the people who built this company. The people you see working in every branch, every day. They are not disposable. They are not numbers. They are the foundation, and they deserve dignity. His words resonated. Stock prices wavered, but public opinion surged in his favor. Customers who once ignored the faces behind the counter now demanded justice for them. And slowly, the tide turned. Weeks later, the chairman himself was forced to resign. Several board members followed, their reputations in ruins, their legacies tied to scandal. Government inspectors raided multiple branches, uncovering hidden ledgers, falsified records, and health violations buried for years. And in court, the company settled for millions, money distributed back to workers who had been robbed for so long. For the first time, Emma saw smiles where there used to be fear. Workers hugged her in branches she had never visited. Letters arrived at her door, handwritten, heartfelt, saying, "You gave us a voice." But Emma didn't feel like a hero. She still worked shifts, though fewer now. She still paid bills, cooked dinner, helped Matteo with homework. The world hadn't magically changed. What had changed was her. She no longer carried her silence like a weight. She had turned her pain into power, and in doing so, lit a fire others could carry forward. And that, she realized, was enough. The story closed not with a grand victory parade, but with something quieter, more human. Emma sat on a park bench, watching Matteo chase pigeons under the autumn sun. She sipped her coffee, breathed in the crisp air, and felt a calm she hadn't known in years. Rio joined her, dressed not in a suit but in a simple jacket, blending into the crowd. He handed her a folded newspaper. The headline read, "From server to symbol, Emma's stand inspires workers nationwide." She laughed softly, shaking her head. "I didn't mean to be a symbol," she said. Rio smiled. "The best symbols never do." They sat in silence for a while, watching the city move around them. Finally, Emma spoke, her voice thoughtful. "Do you think things will really change? Or will it all just go back to the way it was?" Rio didn't answer right away. He looked at the children playing, at the people bustling, at the skyline stretching endlessly above them. Then he turned to her. "That depends. On people like you. On whether others are brave enough to follow." Emma nodded, her gaze drifting back to Matteo. For the first time, hope felt heavier than fear. Change doesn't begin in boardrooms or courtrooms. It begins with one person refusing to stay silent. Emma wasn't the strongest, or the richest, or the most powerful. She was a mother, a worker, someone tired of being ignored. And in her refusal to bow, she reminded us all that real leadership isn't about titles or money. It's about courage, empathy, and the will to protect others. The board thought they could bury the truth. But the truth has roots, and once spoken, it grows. As Emma's story spread across the world, one question lingered. Not just for her, not just for Rio, but for everyone watching. When injustice shows up in your life, will you stay silent, or will you speak?